Hello, and welcome to our CAT Risk Management Credentials Informational webinar. My name is Amy Brenner, and I am the Director of the CAS Institute. With me today are several of our partners from the International Society of Catastrophe Managers. ISCM President Nick DiMuzio, ISCM Vice President David Keaton, ISCM Immediate Past President Randy Law, and ISCM Board Member and Exam Committee Lead, Julie Sirakos. Next slide, please. Today we are here to talk a bit about the CAT Risk Management Credentials developed together by ISCM and the CAS Institute. We'll spend a few minutes talking about the two organizations and our alliance in this endeavor. Then we'll talk about the two credentials we are currently developing, the Certified Specialist in Catastrophe Risk and the Certified Catastrophe Risk Management Professional, as well as the Experienced Industry Practitioner pathway for the latter credential. Finally, we'll take any questions you might have. Please use the question function of the webinar to ask your questions. I will try to group them by topic and make sure the most frequently asked questions are addressed during the live webinar. We will post a complete list of questions and answers in a few days when a recording of this webinar will also become available. You will receive an email with access information. At this time, I would like to invite Nick DiMuzio, ISCM President, to say a few words about ISCM.
Thank you, Amy. As mentioned, my name is Nick DiMuzio. I'm the president of the International Society of Catastrophe Managers. As a quick bit of background, the ISCM was founded almost 15 years ago with the purpose of promoting professionalism and education around the emerging profession of catastrophe risk management. We are a global organization with active members across 25 countries and with regional hubs throughout many key areas of the world. The ISCM provides a forum for the exchange of ideas, understanding current and future catastrophe risk management issues, and also promoting networking amongst our strong and diverse group of catastrophe risk management professionals. Each year, the ISCM holds education seminars for our members, sponsoring thought leadership events in places like Zurich and London, as well as sponsoring webinars aimed at the education around the catastrophe risk management profession. The leadership of the ISCM has been and is today a key contributor in the planning of the REA CAT conference each year. When I joined the executive board of the ISCM many years ago, I was asked what my overarching goal for the organization was, and my answer was, and still is, exactly the same today: the expansion of our educational initiatives and to help design and move forward a credential targeted at our industry. I'm unbelievably happy and proud to see that goal being realized in front of us today. We are grateful to be partnering with a great organization, iCAS, and very excited about what the future holds for our industry. Now I'd like to hand it back over to Amy to give you a brief background on iCAS.
Thank you, Nick. The CAS Institute, also known as iCAS, is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Casualty Actuarial Society. It was formed in 2015 to bring the CAS educational standards to a wider community of quantitative specialists seeking to earn specialized in-demand credentials and quality professional education to address talent demands both today and in the future. The day-to-day operations are handled by staff and volunteers reporting to the iCAS executive team. The executive team reports to an iCAS board that is led by a chair who reports to the CAS board. Since it was launched, iCAS has grown to over 400 members in 10 countries from 200 companies. Our first credential was the Certified Specialist in Predictive Analytics. The qualification process consists of 4 assessments plus an ethics course, which are all currently available. Since we announced it in 2017, almost 250 people have been awarded our first credential in predictive analytics, and there have been more than 350 registrations for exams. David will talk about the partnership and how we got to this point.
Thank you, Amy. Now that we've told you a little more about our two organizations, let's talk about how this alliance is organized and provide you with a brief history of some key milestones. In early 2017, the ISCM and iCAS agreed in principle to form an alliance to jointly create and manage this new suite of professional credentials. By late 2017, a master collaboration agreement was finalized between our two organizations. This master collaboration agreement outlines how the two organizations will work together to develop and maintain all CAT risk management credentials. This schematic diagram shows the governance structure overseeing the credentials. Both the ISCM and iCAS have equal say in discussions and decisions. An advisory committee with representatives from both organizations reviews and advises the presidents of the ISCM and iCAS on key issues. The final say on all issues resides equally with the presidents and boards of both organizations. Next slide, please. The advisory committee is responsible for providing advice and recommendations pertaining to the credentialization requirements, content, and process, including such things as required minimum time of work experience within qualified segments of the insurance industry. As you can see by this slide, the advisory board consists of both ISCM and iCAS members. From the ISCM, the advisory board includes the current executive committee, the past presidents, and the chairperson of the ISCM Education Committee. From iCAS, the advisory committee includes the president of iCAS, the iCAS administrator, and other select members of the CAS. Next slide, please. In 2017, the ISCM Education Committee, led by Dan Dick of Aon, presented the advisory committee with the proposed master syllabus for the multi-tiered credentialization process. Subsequent to that presentation and ensuing discussions, the advisory board recommended that the multi-tiered credential structure be adopted. These two levels were designed to acknowledge the skills and work experience required to distinguish working knowledge to understand and use catastrophe models appropriately within underwriting, actuarial, and risk management functions. The first level is intended to recognize those individuals who have hands-on experience working with using CAT exposure data and model results for either insurers, reinsurers, and/or brokers. The second tier is intended to recognize advanced skills and experience through more detailed use of CAT models, managerial responsibilities of running CAT analytic units, and senior risk management responsibilities within an organization. As we'll discuss later in the presentation, exams for Tier 1 credential are being developed. Once Tier 1 exams are finished, work will begin on Tier 2 exams. Until the Tier 2 exams are finalized, experienced industry practitioners will have an interim pathway to obtain a Tier 2 credential, which will be outlined in more detail in a subsequent slide. While the initial two credentials are focused on the practice of CAT risk management, we've also made an allowance for a similar advanced credential to recognize experts within our profession who may not practice CAT risk management functions daily. Discussions are in the early stages for the placeholder designation noted here as the Certified Catastrophe Risk Model Builder. Once the high-level syllabus for the CAT risk management credentials was adopted, both the ISCM and iCAS began soliciting subject matter experts to develop more detailed learning objectives related to each exam. Stephen Mildenhall from iCAS and St. John's University began training seminars for the first subject matter experts. We'll discuss the subject matter experts more a little later in this presentation. In closing, it's important to note that the curriculum was established and intended to be model agnostic, and the subject matter specialists have included employees from CAT modeling companies. As the exams mature, the focus will expand to address more worldwide perils and worldwide insurance market issues. Next, Nick will talk about how the Alliance operates on a daily basis and elaborate on the subject matter specialist's work.
Thank you, David. Going into our partnership with iCAS to build, develop, and deploy our joint CAT credential, we agreed that representation from both groups was to be distinct and clearly defined. Operationally, the roles are structured as follows. Executive Working Group, which handles the day-to-day logistics related to the credential, is made up of myself, Nick DeMuzio, and David Keaton from the ISCM, Joanne Spalla, Bob McColis, and Amy Brenner from iCAS. Administration will be headed up by Amy Brenner of iCAS, the subject matter working group facilitation overseen by Randy Law and Minchang Mao from from ISCM, along with Amy Brenner from iCAS. For each exam, a group of subject matter experts is selected to work on the curriculum and exam development. This rigorous and objective selection process is to vet subject matter experts so that their expertise is applicable to the areas of the curriculum which they are working. We are currently in the process of wrapping up selection of the subject matter experts group for exam 4, and I will quickly run through a list of the subject matter experts leading up exam 1 through 3. For exams 1 and 2, Chairperson Julie Sirakos of BMS RE. For exam 3, 2 chairpersons, Paul Eaton from Aon and Tom Larson from CoreLogic. Across exams 1, 2, 3, and 4, so far we have solid representation from the insurance industry, reinsurance industry, brokerage firms, CAT modeling firms, as well as InsurTech. Now I'll hand it over to Julie to walk through the credential value.
All right, thanks, Nick. So the exam series is really a formalization of the experience and skills that we as CAT management professionals have acquired and the role that CAT models have played in the evolution of the property insurance and reinsurance industry over the past 30 years. And it's an opportunity for us to demonstrate our knowledge of practical applications of the CAT models. And it also allows us to set ourselves apart among our peers and among the wider insurance industry community as having earned a certain set of skills and experience by holding this credentialization. It's an opportunity for us to continue to advance our knowledge base around CAT models and the application of CAT models and continue to develop practical skills in the application of this information. Another valuable learning objective is to help specialists prepare for additional job duties. So earning the skills that are required for advancement and can be recognized within your firm and recognized by your managers, which then really helps advance your own career and enhance the makeup of your career. And lastly, it really provides a community of catastrophe risk management professionals that we can orient around a common set of skills around CAT models and how they're applied. So there's a lot of value there for obtaining credentialization and having this be available within our community. So now I'm going to go into more detail around the two specific credentials that David had outlined earlier. So the first here, credential, the goal here is really just to understand how CAT models work and how they can be used. And there are 4 exams plus the ethics course. And the topics here are outlined. The first one, the Property Insurance Fundamentals, which is available today, covers, as the name would imply, just kind of the basics of property insurance. It really forms the foundation of the basics of property insurance that a candidate needs to understand in order to start working with CAT models and CAT modeling output. So it focuses on kind of major lines of insurance, such as homeowners and commercial lines insurance, and covers the policy terms and conditions for those policy forms, things like deductibles, limits, coverage breakdowns, replacement cost, actual cash value, and things like that. It also covers basic reinsurance types, facultative treaty, occurrence, excess quota share type reinsurance terms. It covers the basics of insurance accounting terminology and just general insurance industry organization. So again, just sort of foundational set of skills around property insurance. The second exam goes deeper into catastrophe risk fundamentals. So it's an introduction into exposure data that is used by the CAT models and how to qualify the data for whether or not it's relevant or valid to be used within the CAT models. It goes into the history of CAT models. So what gave birth to the CAT models to our industry and why do we use them? What's the importance of CAT models? And provides a historical context around CAT events that have shaped the evolution of CAT models over the last 30 years. It also goes into generally how CAT models are used within the insurance industry, such as underwriting and pricing, risk management, capacity management, capital management, rating agency use, and the like. And finally concludes with general standards of practice that is consistent with the actuarial standards of practice. The third exam in this CSCR is really the introduction to CAT modeling. So this gets into how do the models function? What are the core modules, if you will, of how a CAT model works? So covering items such as the hazard, the vulnerability, the financial structures, the event sets themselves, and sort of general statistics that are used to parameterize the models. It covers generally the hurricane peril and the earthquake peril, although it's meant to be model agnostic, but it does differentiate between the wind peril of hurricane and the earth ground shaking peril of earthquake, and covers the hazard elements and the vulnerability elements of both perils. And then lastly, the fourth exam in this series is an introduction to catastrophe risk management. So it's really about the mechanics of CAT modeling itself. So here we go into general data concepts, the concept of data, how to manage data and work with large sets of data, different types of data. The modeling process itself, from reviewing exposure data and the appropriateness of data for modeling, auditing the data, and then the modeling process itself, the output, how to read the output, and looking at the various statistical views of the output from PMLs, tail value at risk, and things like that. It will cover different perspectives of loss, ground-up loss, gross loss, net loss, etc. And then finally, we'll also cover things such as how to communicate CAT modeling output to other key stakeholders who are using the information to make informed business decisions about the catastrophe risk that's being managed. So there's a large content here within this exam series, and as David mentioned, there are the subject matter working groups that are diligently working on preparing the questions for each of these exams that will become available over the course of the next year or two. Now moving on to the second tier credential. This credential is very much a work in progress at the moment. And it's meant really for professionals to demonstrate that they've got a certain level of knowledge in understanding CAT models, how they work, and specifically how that output has been applied in business decisions. So, as David had mentioned, there's two tracks that are forming around this. The first around catastrophe risk management and the use of model output in practice. So we'll cover things such as various risk metrics that are used, how it's used in pricing, capacity, capital allocation, how models facilitate the risk transfer process in the evolution of structures such as ILWs and cat bonds, parametric type products, index-based products, and the like. It will also cover the use of models in rate filings and the use of models in reinsurance placement, and also advanced concepts of your own view of risk, and to the extent that that you are altering some of the baseline views of CAT models and really coming up with your own view of risk for your firm, and the communication of that risk to stakeholders. The second track, the advanced construction of CAT models, is meant for the model builders and allows them to demonstrate an understanding of how the models are fit relative to historical loss experience, how the models follow basic scientific principles. They follow the latest views in the scientific community around the description of the particular peril and how that's translated into the computer modeling form. It will cover hazards not necessarily considered in Tier 1, such as flood or workers' comp, casualty, or cyber. It will go in deeper into different customized classes of business beyond just general homeowners or commercial lines business policy forms, and also will include elements of creating your own view of risk, but from the standpoint of how the models can be customized to do that, and customizing some of the vulnerability functions or the event sets and things like that, and an element of communicating results to stakeholders and to other third parties. So that's really the idea behind the second tier credential. Now I'll turn it over to Randy, who's going to talk about the experienced practitioner pathway.
Thank you, Julie, for providing great detail about the credential, the tiers, and the elements of them. Now, there are many professionals out there in our industry that have been part of catastrophe management for many years, even decades. These professionals have achieved a level of expertise through work experience that can qualify them as an experienced industry practitioner, which I'll refer to as EIP going forward. These experienced professionals who meet the requirements can earn the credential without taking any exams through this path. These well-experienced individuals would have taken these exams during their career, and this path will be available for a limited time. Many of the experienced professionals in our audience today are wondering, how does one apply for EIP? There are 4 parts of this process outlined as follows: candidate requirements, application process, review process, and finally the approval. For the candidate requirements, the requirements include a demonstrated mastery of subject matter, a minimum level of experience, and most importantly, a nomination by a credentialed EIP or advisory committee member. Now, for those of you thinking about this, go back to the slides that Julie presented earlier. If you can say to yourself that you've done this and you feel very confident in knowing all those factors, then this pathway could be for you. Now, the application process. This is the most important step in the process, as this is where the applicant would detail specific experience and job duties that shows their mastery of the subject matter. When completing the application, it is vital that detailed job functions and descriptions are well documented, and as these are necessary to fulfill the requirement of the credential. Including a CV and a business references will confirm the applicant's experience within the industry. As we move along to the review process, the application will then be reviewed by selected members made up from the advisory committee, the ISCM education committee, and EIP credentialed members. This group will either recommend or deny confirmation of the applicant. Now, once the application has been recommended, the approval process will begin. It will be conducted by the iCAS administration team, and this will complete the EIP process by notifying the applicant of the award and completing all final administrative steps. Now I'd like to pass this back to Amy, who will provide additional details about the exam. Amy?
Thank you, Randy. The first exams for the Certified Specialist in Catastrophe Risk CSCR credential have been completed, Exam 1 actually consists of an online course as well as an exam, both of which are being administered by the institutes. The online course will be available for a year after registration, and exams are offered at any Prometric testing center internationally. Exam 2 is being finalized and will be available April 15th of this year. The syllabus, including assigned reading materials, are on the website that you see listed at the bottom of the screen, catriskcredentials.org. Exam 3 is well underway and is anticipated to be available on July 15th, and we anticipate that Exam 4 will be available January 15th of 2020. The required ethics course is available now on demand through the institutes. Next slide, please. You can register for the available exam and course through the catriskcredentials.org website. To be awarded the credential, either through the examination process or the other credential through the experienced practitioner process, you must be a member of both ISCM and iCAS. When an award is being granted, you will receive information on how to become a member of both organizations. Next slide, please. Now it is time for questions and discussion. One of the questions that came up earlier, is there an experienced practitioner pathway for the CSCR designation? And the answer is that there will be, but it's not available yet. Will exams 2 to 4 be administered by Prometric as well? Yes, they will. And again, you will register through a link that will take you from us to the institutes and register through the institutes, which is helping administer those exams for us. Next question. Do you have to complete Tier 1 before Tier 2? And is there additional information in how long it will take to complete Tier 2? I'm going to turn that question over to Julie.
Okay, thank you. So good question if you have to complete Tier 1 before Tier 2. I mean, I think it's sort of in logical progression. It would make sense that you would complete Tier 1 in Tier 2 if you're practicing through the exams as you're evolving in your career. So I think that that would be the normal path for most candidates. However, there may be exceptions to that where people just feel that it makes sense to do it out of order. And I don't think that there's any limitations to that. And Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong around that. I don't know that there would be any sort of limitation to approaching it that way. However, I think that it's meant to build on each other, much in the way that the associate in the Casualty Actuarial Society leads to the fellowship in the Casualty Actuarial Society. So I think that that would be the more preferred way of approaching the exams. As far as to the second question around how long it will take to complete the Tier 2 certification, that has yet to be determined. So the subject matter experts and the working groups that will define the syllabus in more detail and define the learning objectives and prepare all the questions in the process for the Tier 2 certification, that has yet to be established. And it will be up to those teams of people and their leadership to determine how those exams will be put together and how the candidate will need to demonstrate knowledge around those topics. And I would just suggest that you stay tuned to information from the ISCM and iCAS around as to how that credentialization is unfolding. And I believe, this will be the first in probably several webinars that we will hold over the course of the next couple of years on the topic, as the exam series evolves.
Julie, I'll expand upon that just a little bit, and then David or anyone else, if you want to jump in. The CCRMP, the second tier credential, if you will, is a credential that assumes the knowledge of the first tier, so that if you are qualified for the second tier or to pursue the second tier, it means you've already fulfilled the requirements of the first tier. And you can fulfill those requirements in several ways. One would be through an experienced practitioner pathway for the first tier, which we have not implemented yet, but will down the road. The other is through a series of waivers, and this was another question that we received. Are there ways to get specific exam requirements waived? And the answer is yes. For example, the first examination is taken from curricula that already exist. So if, for example, you have a CPCU and an ARE, we will waive the requirement of exam 1 because you've already been tested on that material. And there are other combinations that we will also waive. We haven't implemented that formally yet, but we are discussing it and will shortly be able to publicize how you would go about getting a waiver. Hopefully that will better address the question about taking Tier 2 before you take Tier 1. If you qualify for Tier 2, you don't have to take Tier 1 because Tier 2 is a higher level credential.
Amy, if I might add a little clarification to that, the EIP process includes providing evidence that you've already done all of Tier 1 and Tier 2. So it's not just a process of Tier 2. The EIP process absolutely shows that you have to demonstrate that you've done everything in Tier 1 and Tier 2.
And there are time in service, so to speak, requirements for both of these credentials, regardless of whether you obtain them through the examination process or through the experience process. You do have to be able to document that you have been involved in the field for a certain number of years. Those years are still being determined for the examination process. So it's not just a credential you can earn by examination without on-the-job experience. Another question, how much will membership of iCAS and ISCM cost? The dual membership fee will be $350 payable annually, and you will need to keep your memberships current in order to use the designation. Are the results available from the October 15th Exam 1 sitting? We receive the results quarterly from the institutes, and the number of people who have taken the examination so far is not significant enough for those results to mean anything in terms of passing rates. Will current CPCUs or FCAS holders or FSAs, etc., be given any exemptions for any of the exams? We talked a little bit about, or I talked a little bit about the waivers for Exam 1. In addition, people who hold an actuarial designation or a CPCU will not have to take the ethics course because that material has already been covered in your other studies. Are there prep materials provided for each exam? For Exam 1, it's an online course, so you have your course right there, and in addition, you may purchase additional materials through the institutes. For the other exams, there will be a reading list, and at some point we will put together, if it makes financial sense, a study packet that contains the required material when, for example, an entire book is not being used, but just a chapter of a book is being used. We are doing our best to use resources in multiple exams so that people don't have to purchase more materials than they have to. So, for example, there's one major textbook that's being used for both Exam 2 and Exam 3. Here's a question that I will turn over to David, I believe. What if I'm already a member of the CII or IFOA or another non-U.S. body, or have a qualification from a non-U.S. body, such as ACII?
Oh, thanks, Amy. Any qualification industry-wide will be evaluated. We're still working on that, as Amy mentioned earlier, in terms of finding the qualified equivalencies. And so as we expand things, that absolutely will be considered, because the goal of this is to bring everybody together that's in the practicing community and not add to things that we've already taken. So there will be equivalencies. They're just not yet confirmed.
Here's an excellent question that I should have covered. When will additional testing windows be open for the first exam? All of the exams, once they are all out there, will be available every 2 months out of 3. So, for example, a testing window would be January 15th through March 15th. And then the next window would be April 15th through June 15th. So each exam is available every 2 months out of 3. And so the current testing window for Exam 1 is January 15 through March 15, and then the next window would be April 15 through June 15. Do we have pass scores determined for the exams? For example, will an 80% be considered a pass? Each exam is going to be looked at differently, and so I'm not in a position right now to say that this is the absolute of what it's going to be. 80% would be considered a pass, but I would certainly say that 80% would certainly be a passing grade. Whether something lower than 80% would be a passing grade has not yet been determined. Are vendor CAT modeling certifications, such as CCRA or CCM, being considered as part of the waiver process? David, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I think that you can see by the list of people that have been included in the subject matter specialist that this has all been incorporated or coordinated with the CAT model builders. The approach here is that this is model agnostic, and as such, the focus is more on the things that are outside of running any individual model. So there may be portions of those designations that may cross over, but at this point in time, it is considered in parallel to those. As time goes on, we'll be, as mentioned before, we will be looking at other equivalencies, but because the exam structure may not fit the same exam structure, it may be that there's a little bit of overlap that has to be dealt with in the exams and not available through equivalency.
Will you be updating the website with the latest or complete final information? The answer to that question is yes. We're constantly updating the website as we have more information, as syllabi get changed or finalized. We also have a mechanism through the CAS Institute where we send out a monthly newsletter that would contain any updates to the information. If anybody is interested in getting on that mailing list, you can go to the casinstitute.org website and sign up to be on the mailing list for that. In addition, major changes are also posted on the ISCM website. Will there be a discount for iCAS members or exam takers to attend the RAA CAT Risk Management Conference each year? David, I'll send that to you too.
Well, just to be clear, the RAA sets those, and that is not set by the iCAS or ISCM. So the rate structure for the RAA is independent of this. You will be required, one of the things that we did not hit upon is the continuing education requirement. The RAA conference will absolutely be qualified for meeting the requirements for continuing education. If you don't attend a similar CAT conference like that, then there are other things that will have to qualify for continuing education, just like in any other credential.
Will you be incorporating any technical skills such as SQL, R, or Python?
Amy, I'll dive in on that too. That's been discussed at length within the advisory committee and the education committee, and following the idea that this is model agnostic and that there are several different data schemas and querying mechanisms out there. That technical skill is not the purpose of these exams, but demonstrating a knowledge and an understanding of the challenges and the benefits of such data manipulation is intended to be part of the exam process. The details of that are going to be worked out.
What are the continuing education requirements? Those requirements have not yet been determined. We have determined that there will be continuing education requirements, but specifically what the number of hours and the distribution of those requirements have not yet been determined. Let me scroll through the questions and make sure we've answered them all. Okay, here are some questions. Are there any prerequisites for enrolling in the Certified Specialist in Catastrophe Risk Tier 1 program? Somebody want to take that one?
I can jump in here. I don't, there's no necessary prerequisite for starting the exams. We certainly want individuals who are working within the profession or anticipate working within the CAT modeling field to be taking the exams and furthering their knowledge on the exams. But for the Tier 1 credential, there are no specific prerequisites in order to start taking the exams.
We had a couple more questions about continuing education. Will other designation continuing education qualify? For example, CPCU CE credits. Will they apply to CE for the CAT designations? The answer is yes if they are CAT related. So in other words, that you can take a course that could count for CE for multiple designations as long as the subject matter applies to both of those designations. Will we be sharing our roadmap for future enhancements and plans? Absolutely. And the best place to obtain this information is on the catriskcredentials.org website. We try to keep that as current as possible. As enhancements or decisions or other offerings are presented, we share those on the website. That's the best place to go for the most current information that we have. I have a question that don't quite understand. When will the exam session for module of catastrophe modeling start? But I think that we've answered that question with the timeline that I went over.
Amy, I think we should remind all the participants that we will follow this up with if there are additional questions to be asked that are not thought of right now but submitted later, we will try to answer those as well. So if you don't have questions immediately and you have questions down the line, absolutely feel free to send those in and we will try to answer those.
And I've received several emails from people. If you have any more questions, you can certainly respond to the registration email that you got. Those are coming right to me, so I will get those questions and would be happy to make sure that the answers to those are included when we publish the recording of this webinar and the written Q&As. If there are no more questions, and I don't see any additional questions popping up on the question list, then I want to thank our panelists today. Nick DiMuzio, ISCM President. David Keaton, ISCM Vice President and President-elect. ISCM Past President Randy Law. And ISCM Board Member and my right hand at these credential developments, Julie Sirakos. And thank you to our audience for joining us this afternoon. And we look forward to sharing more information with you, both through the website and through future webinars. And with this, I will end the webinar.